welcome to We Never Met, the podcast where I have interesting strangers on every single week. Today we have Brooke Anderson. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm excited to chat because I actually was at the Portland Flea last week and I saw your stuff. People are packed into your area. I felt like your area is very, very popular.
Yeah, it gets really busy. Yeah, I'm always really surprised about how many people show up.
It's you have a dog as well, yeah.
I do.
And we were briefly talking about that because what's her name?
Her name is Leia.
And what's her mix? Because it is interesting.
Yeah, so she's half Cocker Spaniel and half Saint Bernard, and as you can hear, she's very vocal.
Where did you find her? Did you find her as a puppy?
Yeah, so I got her after like a brief spell of pretty bad like depression, anxiety a few years ago, and I was like, okay, I just really want to get a dog to help with that kind of stuff. I was looking for Saint Bernards, which in hindsight would have been a really bad idea. I came across her, and she was like the cutest puppy I've ever seen, and she was just perfect. She was like, I don't know, she was just perfect, and she was tiny. I got her like a few months old, and have her ever since.
Yeah, I don't know if you live in an apartment or not, but it's almost like you have a miniature Saint Bernard that's easier to have.
Yeah, so they're called miniature Saint Bernards, which is a thing. Yeah, and it is. It's way easier. I live in a house, but it's not big, so
yeah,
it would have been a whole thing if I had a Saint Bernard.
It's amazing how much pets help with that stuff, though, because I also have anxiety and OCD and have had it since a kid. I'm a kid, and we have a cat even, and there's something about having an animal around that really helps. Yeah,
totally. I mean, she helped in a lot of ways. She was very frustrating as a puppy, which helped because I wasn't focused on myself.
Sure.
I was focused on her. And so although it was really hard, it was like really helpful. And then now, obviously, she's much better. So we have a relationship, and it's just having something there all the time.
Right.
I think it's helpful.
Right. That cares that you're there, that really wants you there.
That loves you.
No, it's great. And, talking about the Portland Flea. So the reason that I wanted to have you on and I was like really interested in what you're doing is because I haven't ever seen it. Like I've never seen anyone do what you do, which is like quilt jackets and like getting things from thrift shops and like making them into shirts and stuff. It's really cool, and it's so well done, and it's just so unique. So can you talk about like with just like even the quilt jackets, where did that come from? Like how did you start creating those?
I've been into like vintage and thrifting and that kind of stuff for many, many years, and I majored in product design, so with like a focus in textiles. So I've done sewing and weaving and all that kind of stuff forever. So for me, like finding vintage textiles, quilts especially, is very special because it's like, somebody else put however many hours into this amazing piece of art. And I've never quilted, so that's a bit too much for my for my taste. But I really appreciate like these other, artists that are making these amazing things. And so I get really excited when I find textiles like that. The older, the better. And then I guess the idea to make those kinds of things into clothing that people can wear is just the idea of like making a new life out of something that is, for whatever reason, just a bit too worn and used and old to really be what its intended purpose.
Sure.
So for quilts, I try to use ones that have holes or are really worn, and then cut those in a way where, you can still use them and wear them. And, and then it's just so special because someone's now wearing this, 50-year-old quilt that like you never, like, I'm sure the maker never thought that it would go this long, let alone be like worn and then go another, who knows, 10, 20 years. And it's just really, it's sustainability for me. That's like a form of sustainability in fashion that I really appreciate, is just reusing and repurposing.
Yeah.
So kind of melding like two things into one.
No, they're super cool. And I encourage everyone to check them out and go see them. What is your Instagram, by the way, so people can go find you?
It's Brooke Siako. So I know it's a little tricky. It's BROOKE and then CIOCCO.
Because are the quilts like hard to find? Because I have been to several thrift stores in my time, and
Yeah,
I don't know if I've seen ever a quilt, and even a quilt that would be like maybe stain free or something, that you could actually use. Are they tough to find?
Yes, they're very hard to find, and they can be very expensive. So, well, I mean, I even rescheduled this on you because there's a sale with quilts, and I have to go because it just doesn't come along. So when I have those chances, I really like to jump on them because I prefer to buy my quilts in person when I can, but I do buy a lot online. But yeah, they're very hard to find in person for sure.
Yeah.
And then, they're worth a lot of money. So of course, like some of them are going to be really expensive and
because do you have like a quilt person out there that like notifies you if there's like a quilt thing going on and you can go really quickly and go and get some?
I wish. If anybody's out there doing that, let me know. Hit me up because I'd love to have a quilt person that just finds quilts for me all the time. But no, I don't at the moment. But yes, I've been trying to get people of that nature in my circle.
Yeah. Because I mean, that has to be one of the hardest parts, I'd assume, is like getting the supply. It's just trying to get enough to make.
If I find a good estate sale or, my friends, if they're thrifting where they're at and they see something, I'm just like, just buy it. I got you,
Yeah.
Yeah. And that goes for like even vintage fabric and stuff. I mean, sometimes you'll just hit the jackpot and you just buy it, just get it all and then use it over time.
Yeah. Because are there instances of people like, I have a quilt, I'll send it to you. Can you make it into a jacket? Did that happen?
Yeah, I do. I do that too. Yeah. Not as much because I think, again, hard to find. So people don't, but if they want like a more expensive quilt or something that I don't like there's hundreds of quilt designs. So if there's something that I don't have or haven't had in a long time, then they might find that. And so like, I just got one today that I'll be making into a jacket from a customer. And then sometimes it's, their family's quilts, like their grandma's quilts that they'll send me to make into something, which is very special in that case because it's a little high pressure, but it's very special because it's like carrying on, their family's legacy and, creating something new out of that. So that's really special too.
Yeah. Because what is like the process of like from quilt to jacket? Because I assume that all quilts aren't the same size and they're different lengths. So how do you even go about making sure that you have enough quilt to make a jacket? Yeah,
well, I mainly only buy, pretty big quilts, unless it's one that I like really love. Then I might buy like say a twin size that could still make a jacket, but it might be like a short jacket, something. So I have to get creative, really is what it comes down to. So I'll buy a quilt or multiple quilts. I wash them, I launder them, make sure they're clean, try to rid them of stains, that kind of thing, repair what I need to. And then I only repair it like if there's a hole all the way through. Otherwise, I like to leave the wear because I think, it makes it special, unique, So, and then I lay it out and try to fold it in different ways to see what's the best way, what I can get out of this quilt. I try to use as much as possible. So a lot of the time I'll do 2 jackets out of 1 quilt if I'm able, but that's really the process. And then I just cut it out and I just kind of go for it. It's really there's no like plan ahead of time really. When I see a quilt, I just kind of, say, okay, well, we're going to try this out, see what happens. And generally it works out. I think there's only been 1 or 2 quilts where I maybe only got 1, although I thought I might get 2, but I couldn't for whatever reason.
Because what do you do with all because I'm sure there's stuff left over. Is there ever like all those quilts combined into 1 jacket, all the leftover scraps into 1?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't do that because if you think about it, it's just a lot. It's a lot of work.
Yeah, tons, yeah.
It's like quilting. That would be like quilting, which is so time consuming that I've never touched it because to me, it just seems so daunting. But no, I sell the scraps to artists, like makers who make like little toys and stuff like that. So I'll collect all the scraps that I have, big, small pieces, and then I give them to yeah, like local makers that are interested in using them, and they do, and they look awesome. They'll make like little stuffed animals and stuff.
Hmm.
Yeah, so it's just like, yeah, trying to use as much as possible. I do make some things with the scraps occasionally, but I'd rather just give it to someone who's really gonna use it for something special.
So where does all this come from? Like, when did you start sewing and like creating? Like, were you doing this from a young age, or was this something that came on later in adulthood?
Yeah, so I've always been pretty creative. My family is not. So it was interesting because like as a kid, they were like, why do you want to do these things? Like they had no
Yeah.
idea. I didn't start sewing until later on, but my mom sewed
Mm.
she only like repaired stuff. Back in her day, she did sew clothes like as a younger person, but older she didn't. So what I knew of her was just like repairing things.
Hmm.
And of course I thought it was like pretty dumb because my mom was doing it. So I was like, oh, like
Yeah,
that's,
yeah,
and same with thrifting. My mom was a huge thrifter. And at the time, like as a kid, I was like, hated it because I
yeah.
thought it was gross and like it wasn't cool and all this stuff. And it wasn't until like high school that I really got into it because it got cool kind of.
Hmm.
At that point, people were kind of like starting to get into it. Now it's huge. People love
Hmm.
thrifting and vintage. At the time, it was not as cool in my circles. Yeah. And then like in high school, I knit and I did ceramics and painted and, all that kind of stuff. And then it wasn't until college that I actually thought, oh, hey, like I could make a living doing creative things where like my parents never, like they were like, no, absolutely not. Like you have to do, this and
Yeah.
this. Like they were like, there's no way. But at that time, I'm a millennial. And like at that time, all of my friends were pursuing creative careers,
Hmm.
whether it be like web design or like architecture, that kind of stuff. So it was kind of like, oh, okay, well, if everybody I know is starting to do this, like I'm
Yeah.
going to do it. So, and I pursued, a degree in product design at U of O. And in that program, it was really new at the time. You had to take a lot of like art credits.
Mm.
So I focused in textiles, which meant like I did a lot of weaving. I have a loom, which I haven't touched in years, but at the time I was using a lot. Dyeing, which I do now a lot of, that kind of stuff. And then sewing kind of came in at that point, but just not garments, mainly like accessories. And then I really didn't start sewing clothes until maybe like 2 years ago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah. And then it kind of escalated from there.
Yeah.
Well, I did macrame as well for a time in between college and sewing. I was doing macrame for many years, actually, and it was really successful at that time. But I realized that, well, one, my hands hurt really bad. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
and two, really don't enjoy making art in the sense of like a wall piece or like
Mm.
something that you look at. Like the way I get my like pleasure from doing these creative things is making something that's like useful.
Mm.
I did major in product design, so it's a lot of like I prefer to make something that I still consider art, but it's something
Hmm.
that like someone can get use out of. Not that I'm saying that an art piece isn't useful in the way of
No, well,
like
functional
bringing
use.
joy.
Yeah.
Functional, yes,
Yeah.
exactly. So making clothes was like so much more fulfilling for me.
Hmm.
So over like many years of doing macrame, it was just kind of got to a point where I felt like I just couldn't do like I couldn't expand
Hmm.
at all. So I kind of stopped pretty much stopped doing that completely and then went straight into sewing basically and have been doing that ever since. So
Yeah.
always something.
Yeah. Because I was going to ask, like, growing up in a household where, because what did your parents do as like jobs?
My mom was a pharmacist and which she worked like constantly. And my dad did like, it's called erosion control, but like landscaping type stuff.
Mm.
So they're baby boomers. So they're
Sure.
like, you work for a living, you don't enjoy your work, doesn't
Right.
matter, you make money and then
That's
you
why it's
retire.
called work. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
then, exactly. And I'm sure so many people can relate to this if they have like older parents. That's just their concept of like
Yeah.
life.
Yeah.
So it took a really long time to like, I mean, of course, my degree they were confused about, but I think they, I guess, kind of were like, okay, she could make money doing something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then going out of, college and actually starting a career, which, my full-time job is Thunderpants, which is an organic cotton underwear line. And for years they were like, what are you doing? Like this,
Right.
and I didn't make much money because we started it from the ground up. So they were like, what the heck are you doing? And of course I was always complaining about money and all this stuff, but I loved it. I love it. So, and I just held on and held on. And now we're finally like, I guess you could say successful or becoming successful. So now it's like, haha, look at that, mom and dad. And now they're finally like okay with it because I'm like, I'm feeling, because I finally got to a point where it's like worth it. All the work I did, like all the, work I did to have this creative career finally is like paying off.
Yeah. Yeah.
So now they're okay with it.
Yeah. Because was it hard to like keep doing those creative things when you were young, having parents that didn't really necessarily encourage you to keep doing that stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah,
definitely.
Why'd you keep doing it?
Well, it helped that I was like pretty good in school and like, got good grades, that kind of stuff, because I know a lot of people my age, that I grew up with who were really artistic, but maybe weren't excelling in other ways. And I know their parents were maybe a lot more frustrated with like their hobbies. Whereas for me, it was really like a hobby, like side hobby. And I mean, even to this day, it kind of is more of like a side hobby, although my career is creative as well. But yeah, it was tough. They were always kind of like confused.
Yeah.
But I would make them things and they would love it. So, it works. But they also like, they did let me also do, like they did encourage me to do whatever I wanted.
Yeah.
So like, I didn't play a lot of sports because I would try a sport and I would hate it. So they were like, that's fine, just don't do it. So it wasn't so much like they were against
they were just
like
confused.
Creative things. They were just like, I don't know why you like to do this. But also they were quite impressed that like I was able to do these things that they weren't, So there was also that side of it. And I was making money doing creative things like from a young age too. Like I've always had a business mind.
Right.
Which is probably why I gear more towards like functional things as well. But I've always like been really business oriented. So for me, like even in high school, I was like knitting hats in class and selling them like to my classmates, So like they liked that too, because for them, that was more along their lines of like, and I'm sure they had something to do with that part of me, but that was kind of like their, oh, okay, well, she's like doing this, but she's also like making money doing it. So like, okay, so I don't know.
No, yeah. I definitely found with parents, because we probably have parents of a similar age. Mine are in their 60s now. I found with parents like of that generation, it's very much like they want you to, the whole money thing is just like they want you to not struggle, basically.
Exactly.
But only in that specific realm. Like they can't tell you like mentally, I don't want you to struggle mentally. I just want you to not struggle financially.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it's like their way of basically say, we don't want you to struggle, because they can't say it in any other way, because they don't know how to.
Exactly. And like, they just were not raised like we are so lucky, like our generation, especially, because I think we kind of have forefronted this like mental awareness, and now it's like, seeping over into like the next generations, and it's just becoming more and more like accessible and okay. And when I had my like pretty bad like anxiety depression episode a few years ago, my parents were like, what is going on? Like they did not know how to deal with me. But over time, like during that time, they were there for me and supportive. And I learned that they had also gone through similar things. They had just never talked about it.
Right.
Like they had been on antidepressants and they had these things happen to them, but they just never shared them with me. And I'm sure most parents of that age maybe never did with their kids. Yeah. Which makes it hard for us. But then it was so eye-opening to like know that, oh, so like they experience these things too. Yeah. They just never talked about it. Like I cried as a kid and they were like, why are you crying? Like, get over it. It was never. Yeah. No, I know what you mean. So and that was a big stepping point in my relationship with them too, because after that, they were a lot more supportive of my like creative endeavors because they knew that it made me happy. And they didn't want to see me, you know, in that same position. So since then, they've been a lot more open to like what, you know, my paths, not fighting them as much because I know that they know that it makes me happy. And like you said, they just want me to be, like stable and financially happy and like feel secure.
Yeah. Yeah, no, because I had a very similar experience, except my parents had never said a word about any of that stuff. Like when I was growing up, I had severe, I mean, I still have it, but I've learned how to deal with it better through therapy, OCD and anxiety and like panic attacks that like took me to the hospital. Yeah. And my parents' initial reaction to that all was be like, don't tell anyone about this, which is like the worst thing to tell a 12-year-old because I didn't talk about it publicly until I was like in college. And so super shame-ridden stuff, you know? And so I still haven't had that conversation with my parents, and I don't think I ever will. But it sounds like it's nice.
I think they were just so scared because, like, for me, I never showed any of that growing up. I was always, like, a happy kid. Like, I never experienced, like, anxiety and depression. So I don't know what that would be like, experiencing that as a child.
So it's like a curveball for them. Like, they didn't see it coming.
Exactly. And I was, like, in the hospital. You know, so it got so bad that I like literally couldn't talk or eat. So I think for them, they were like, oh shit, like there's something really wrong here. And we need to figure. So for them, I think it was easier for them to open up because I was like, literally like, I need help. Yeah. Like you need to tell me that this is okay. You know, like you need to talk to me about it. And they were still in their same way of like, well, like, this is pretty extreme. I don't know. You know, but at the same time, my dad's like, well, you know, I did struggle for like a little bit, you know, and like just
little crack in the door.
Little nuggets of like, I mean, I guess I kind of understand what you're going through. Yeah. You know, it's baby boomers. They just don't.
Yeah. No, it's
They're so shelled.
Yeah. It's unfortunate that it happened to, I'm going to say for myself personally, like it's an unfortunate situation. But I'm glad also sort of that it happened because I can now deal with, you know, if me and my fiance have kids differently and know the impact of how that feels on somebody when it's not handled well, and not repeat the same mistakes. So, I think that's, or just not repeat the same mistakes to other people, friends, whatever, you know, whoever it may be out there. But yeah, it's a tough place, but so you talked about a little bit when you started like taking this more seriously or like saw this as like something that you could do as a career. Like what changed for you to make it in your mind something that was like feasible to do as a job or make money off of at least?
I think having my peers not only have parents that were more creative and so they were like expecting their kids to do something creative, but also just like having friends that were like really open to pursuing that kind of stuff. That was really helpful because it made me feel like, okay, I can do it too. And also at that time, and you may also experience this because it seems like we're probably pretty similar in age. Like all of my friends were like, not only my friends, you know, were pursuing this, but also like in the media. And like, that was when like Instagram was really happening. And like, it just like felt like that was something that you could just do. Before that, I didn't even know that was like an outlet. Yeah. You know, we didn't have internet, like for a part of, like for my life, like part of, you know, growing up, we didn't have internet. There wasn't websites. There wasn't web design. It wasn't like that creative aspect of all that wasn't a thing really, as far as I knew. So once I was in college, it was actually becoming like a real thing. And so it was really interesting. And I just like, I started in, sorry, my cat's about to come into this. Oh, no, you're cool. I started in biology is what I started in because I love animals. So I was like, I'm going to do this. I went to Hawaii and I was like, I'm going to do this marine biology thing and then learned real quickly that I hate science and I hate, you know, like all that kind of stuff.
It's a good thing to know. Yeah.
So I figured that out pretty quick. And then I was like, all right, I'm out. Like that's not happening. And the only thing that felt right was doing something creative. And I think I just found the perfect thing that melded creativity and also like design melded this like artistic creative aspect, but also business as well.
Do you think like sewing and like creating like helps with your mental like state? Like, do you think it helps with your anxiety, and like does it put you in a different place, or what does that do for you?
Totally. Yeah. It's pretty much like therapy for me. I mean, I do therapy
Mhm.
also, but yeah, it's pretty much like for me, it's kind of like most textile art and forms of textile work that I have found is very repetitive,
Mhm.
which I enjoy because for me, it's like the longer I do it, the easier it becomes. Like I could sew in my sleep, like it's
Mm.
so easy for me at this point that it's like such a thing where you have to focus on it, right? Because if you're not
Mhm.
focused, you could mess up, and then that's a whole thing. So it's almost like you're so focused on this task at hand, and it's so repetitive. You could do it for hours without stopping. It's like I'm not thinking about all these other things in my life that I might otherwise be thinking of. Like if
Mhm.
I'm just sitting and relaxing, as they say, which I do try to do,
Yeah.
but when I'm doing that, it's like I'm thinking about things, like it's never that relaxing.
Yeah.
Whereas when I have a task, and even in work, like when I have a task that I'm just like doing, like shipping, for example, like when I'm doing that, it's just like I don't know, it's like I forget everything else and I just
Mhm.
do this task for hours, and it's very nice
Yeah.
for me personally, and it's like a break
Yeah.
from reality, I guess.
Yeah.
Not that reality is all bad, but it's
Yeah.
just kind of, yeah, like for me, it's definitely like a therapeutic thing.
No, I completely understand that. I used to swim as a kid, on a swim team, and I found very much the same with that, where it was like a break from my mind. I remember I
Yeah,
could be super anxious, but like I had to like concentrate on like a repetitive motion of
I
swimming.
did the same. I swam as
Yeah,
well. So, and
yeah,
it was the same thing. Yeah.
yeah. And it's also like you have to like concentrate on just like not drowning, like
You're
that's
not like hitting your head on
yeah, when you're doing flip turns and
making your
stuff.
flips.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
because it is very much like that. What came first? Or did like the quilts come before? Because you make other things as well. Was that like the quilted jackets came first, or like the shirts that you do from thrifted things? Did those come before?
Yeah. Well, actually, technically, the quilted jackets did come pretty early on when I started sewing clothes. I started sewing clothes for myself for fun.
Sure.
This was pre-pandemic. So, how long was that now? It was like 2000,
2019.
early 2019. Yeah. I'm like, I don't even know what
Yeah.
year it is. It was early 2019, and I was sewing. One of my close friends also started sewing at the same time, so we would like sew clothes for ourselves and like do she's a photographer, so we would do like photo shoots, and it was really fun because we'd like share patterns and fabric and all this stuff. And my boss's grandma gifted me a quilt that she had because
Mm.
I had the idea of doing it, and I was like, oh, I need to find a quilt, and I was looking for like months and months, and I couldn't find one. And she mentioned it to her grandma, and her grandma was like, she could have this one. And so that was my first. I'm actually looking at it right now
Oh.
on my rack. That was my first jacket that I made, and I wore it constantly, and I would get so many compliments, like more compliments on that than I got on most things I own.
Sure.
So that's why in my head I was like, oh well, people like this,
Mm-hmm.
maybe I should, and everyone would ask like, do you like make those to sell? And I'm like, no. So, but it wasn't until like mid pandemic, like mid 2020, that I actually started sewing them to sell like that fall. So it really hasn't been that long that I've been like sewing them for customers. But yeah, it definitely came early on, but I was sewing all different kinds of clothes, in the beginning. And I did actually work part-time sewing for like a little clothing company years before that. So I didn't start sewing like for myself until like 2019.
Did you ever think about
Yeah,
making like a set, like a jacket and pants or jacket and
I
shorts?
did. I
Oh,
do
really?
have. Oh yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, yeah. I don't offer like pant option. Right now, like I have a boxy collection, which is like a top and a dress, and they're all like one size, and
Mm-hmm.
I'll adjust measurements for, people who need either smaller size or bigger size. But I do sometimes do like a custom pant here and there. But I mean, for me, since this is like a side job, it
Mm-hmm.
was really more about just like, what can I make that's like the easiest for me to make but also something that like people enjoy the style of.
Right.
People like something that I can have for a very long time and not change.
Sure.
Was kind of my goal, because I wanted it to be like we were talking about, more of like a escape hobby that I could make money doing, but not something that was going to like really take up all of my like mind, thought process and time, because I tried to keep most of that for my full-time job just because, that's my salary job.
Right.
And that's really important to me. So I haven't really expanded much, except for the quilt jackets, which have done really well. And I probably won't, to be honest, at least not for a while.
Yeah. Cause quilt jackets they're like super cool and stuff, but I would assume that quilt pants are something that is more of a niche.
So I haven't made quilt pants.
That's what I was saying.
You were saying would be hot. Yeah, they would be hot for sure. I have seen them done.
Yeah.
Yes, I have seen people making them, and they're amazing. And I really want to, but pants take a lot of fabric. People might not know this. They do. So it's hard for me because I don't want to use a whole quilt on pants.
Sure.
But I probably will someday. Or a jumpsuit. Ooh, I could just go on forever.
Yeah, because I was saying like the suit or the quilt jacket and pants combo, that might be a really cool look. Yeah.
I've definitely done that in like linen. I have not done that in a quilt. I want to though. So
yeah,
at least just for myself, or shorts. Like that'd be really cute. So maybe you'll see that at a flea soon.
Yeah, because I feel like quilt pants is a lot more of like a higher risk purchase too, because I feel like they're just easier to get dirty. Like especially, I'm from Wisconsin, especially in like the winter time when I would probably be wearing quilt pants because I feel like it's just a lot easier to get them muddy or like gross and stuff.
I mean, they would definitely have to be like lounge pants, like special lounge pants.
Indoor pants only. Which
again is more of a risky purchase because they're going to be expensive.
Yeah.
And then it's like you can't actually wear them out. And also for women, I don't know. Well, I'm sure some men as well, but pants wear so much faster than jackets or tops. So with that too, I mean, you're looking at like probably not a super long life if you have that issue, which I do. So I'm like, oh, I don't really want to make pants when I know like the crotch is just going to be like ripped out in a couple months.
Yeah, for
sure. Yeah, I mean, there's things to consider in that regard. And also, like I said, I hate to like use a beautiful quilt to make pants because I feel like a jacket it just gets so much more wear and lasts so much longer.
Yeah.
So
it also had to be a ginormous quilt for you to use both for pants.
Oh, totally. It would have to be like a California king size.
Someone that worked for 20 years to make it or something.
Exactly. I mean, literally, you're not kidding.
Yeah.
Which maybe someday. I've seen a lot of people use like commercial quilts for that kind of stuff too. So it's a lot lower risk.
Where does like the whole sustainability stuff, where does that come from?
Sustainability in the fashion industry and like clothing industry is super important to me. And it has been like ever since. I mean, even in college, I did a lot with like using, sustainable textiles, that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. But then when I got out of college, I ended up working for my current boss now, who I started Thunderpants with. She owned a little shop downtown called Radish Underground. And it was like this little shop that carried only like sustainable clothing and accessories from like small makers and small companies. And it was all like, we never bought anything that wasn't like organic cotton, linen, like natural fibers, silk, that kind of stuff. And it's, very like low impact and small scale. Mm-hmm. So I learned a lot doing that. I did that for many years. And of course, like we started Thunderpants together after that. And Thunderpants is also a sustainable company. We use organic cotton. All of our practices are sustainable, even like fair wages, that kind of stuff. Like if you want to get even further into it, but because of that stuff, like I've learned the importance of like not only small business, but like a small, like sustainable clothing company where everything's made locally. You outsource like locally, you use only, like the best materials you can. So aside from quilts and like thrifted fabrics, I don't buy anything that isn't linen or cotton for the most part. I do use a little silk sometimes, but otherwise I'm a pretty big textile snob when it comes to all that.
Yeah.
And then otherwise, like aside from thrifting, like I will buy things from small makers and sustainable clothing companies. I'm just a big advocate of like, not supporting these like big box stores where everything is, made overseas and in horrible conditions and,
Right.
that kind of stuff. I know a lot about it, so it really puts me off. And I'm just like, I'm completely in a different world when it comes to that kind of stuff.
No.
And even when we were younger, it just wasn't a big thing. Now, sustainability in the fashion industry is huge. It's huge. And that's why thrifting is so big. And that's why all these like small independent like clothing companies are able to thrive, because people are actually appreciating that concept of like small scale local, and especially here, like especially in Portland. I mean, I'm sure it's not like this all over, but it is getting there. But like Etsy, I mean, it's huge. Like that kind of stuff is just more accepted now, and people are like thinking about it a little bit more. I think, and I hope.
Yeah. No, because I was going to ask about like the sustainability practices, because it reminded me of an article I was reading this month about Pride Month, because it was basically about businesses using it to make people buy their stuff more and not really actually supporting any people under that umbrella.
You find that a lot.
Yeah, and I was going to ask, is that a similar thing? Do a lot of like bigger companies use the sustainability mantra, maybe use one sustainability practice and be like, we're sustainable, so like buy our clothes?
100%. 100%. Especially now that it's popular. Like now that people are like interested in it, like you see like H&M, and those kind of like Forever 21, those kind of companies be like, oh, like don't like give us your clothes and we'll recycle them, or like they have like a sustainable line, or they partner with like small makers, which by the way is never beneficial to the makers. And just to exploit, I mean, they're exploiting them, or they'll just like steal small makers' designs, like, yeah, totally. They do that all the time. And it's just to try to confuse people that don't really understand what's going on. And I'm not saying that, I mean, not every, like Patagonia is great as far as like sustainability. There's a lot of big companies that do a lot of good stuff. Sure. But yeah, for the most part, it's pretty bad. Yeah. And even some small companies will do things like that. And I think it's just a learning curve. Like, if you're gonna try to profit off of like, an event or a group of people or an organization or, anything like that, especially Pride, it's like, you need to be, donating. You need to be like, it needs to be for a reason. You can't, I mean, that's unethical personally, I think so. But yeah,
no, it is completely, but they don't care. It's like
they don't care. No,
it's like a markeing ploy, basically. Exactly. It's just another marketing campaign. But yeah, the reason I thought of that is because the other week I was talking to, do you know Cafe Zamora? Do you know what that is?
No.
It's a coffee shop in, I think it's in Southeast Portland, but he's from Guatemala, and basically we were talking about like the coffee trade or whatever, and they do the exact same thing where they put like fair trade, but it doesn't actually mean anything. It's just like another word to try to get you to buy their stuff. But well, my best friends own a coffee company, and I don't drink coffee, so I only know what they talk about. But same, oh my gosh, it's so bad, and you find it everywhere. I mean, it's in everything, in every industry, in every industry where people are going to like exploit these things. And then it's just so frustrating, because then people that aren't educated on the subject, they don't realize why like this coffee, that says fair trade is $30. Versus this coffee that says fair trade is, $10. It's just confusing. They don't know that they're being duped, right? And they don't know, or even if it doesn't say fair trade and there's a coffee that's $15 and a coffee that's $30, a lot of people are going to want to buy. And same with clothing. People want to buy this like fast fashion because it's cheaper, and they think that it's, why would they spend $100 on a top when they could spend $10 on a top? But they don't think about like the, issues behind that and why that item is able to be that price. Right. So really there just needs to be more education on the topic. Yeah. But again, in Portland, it's hard because people are so informed, I feel like here,
that it's, you feel like you're in this like bubble of like sustainability. But then as soon as I go to like Arizona to visit my dad or like the East Coast, it's like,
yeah,
I'm always educating people on why our underwear costs $24. It's like I'm always having to. It's easier with the clothing because they know that I'm sewing it specifically.
Right, sure.
It's coming from me, so people are more willing to spend more, I think. But it's like, okay, our underwear is being sewn by a woman who immigrated from Mexico at this little factory in Hillsborough. Like, it's the same thing. It's just like hard to. Yeah, I don't know. Hard for people to understand.
Well, it's good that you're doing that because I feel like that's part of the thing and part of what needs to be done. Because it's as one person, it's hard to be educated about everything. So we need advocates and people like you that are doing that and explaining why that's the case. Because even with the price analogy thing, it's also very confusing because sometimes companies charge more to make it seem like it's better, but it's actually not. there's actually some. I read an article about, and it's funny that they publish it in an article because it sort of like, it makes it not work really anymore, but I guess it still does. But basically, it was a vodka company that instead of doing anything, they just raised their prices by $15 to see if that would help increase sales. And it did. It made it seem more premium. Yeah, exactly. And so it's all just a mind fuck basically when you're going out there.
Totally. My biggest suggestion to anyone who cares even a little bit about like where their stuff is coming from, where their money's going really, right, is research. Like just research. Like if you like something and you want it, just research the company. And I'm not a saint. Like I buy from Amazon every now and then.
No
like
one's perfect.
The convenience is, so you can't, sometimes you just cannot get around the convenience. And I'm not here to like chastise anyone for like buying something at Walmart. Like, no, I've totally done that. I've been there. That's not what I'm about. It's more just like, just thinking a little more about like where your stuff is coming from. And like, if you do care, just doing the research and seeing like, what are these businesses' ethics? Like, what are they doing? Like, are they transparent? Do you know who's making these clothes? Do you know what they're getting paid? Do you know where their fabric comes from? Where's their fabric grown? Like, what is it? Yeah. And for a lot of people, I'm sure that's just like way too much. And that's totally fine. Like if that's not your thing and you don't care, like live your life. I have no problem with it. Just personally, I try to, educate as much as I can. I mean, the conversations I've had with my extended family is insane. Trying to like convince them. But I mean, if it's important to you, do the research. If not,
Yeah. Because the way I look at it sort of is like, even if you care a little bit and you can change like one thing that you do, like that's helpful. Because I grew up in a house that there was a lot of kids and we didn't have a lot of money. So like my parents wouldn't have been able to afford $100 for any clothing anyways. Like we were having to shop limited, so I know there's definitely people out there that are in the same situation. And I think it's more if you can, maybe you should look into it,
Sure. And yeah, definitely. And in that case, financially, there's definitely a huge gap there as far as like sustainability is really not only, but strongly available to those who can afford it. Sure. Because it is more expensive.
Because it has to be. Yeah.
Yeah, because it has to be. And that's why our economy is screwed up, right? It's like it has to be more expensive when it really shouldn't be. Right. Like making stuff locally should be less expensive, but it's not.
Right.
So it's just all screwed up. You just do what you can.
Yeah. It's also, you could just wait for 10 years and then like holes in your shirt will become cool. I mean, I see people with holes in their shirt all the time. Now it's like high fashion. So you gotta wait it out.
Well, it was the same thing about like thrifting. Like that stuff was not cool, but now it's like all the rage. Everybody loves vintage stuff. And like, man, my mom is always like, what? You guys are wearing like stuff I wore in the 80s? Like what's happening?
Yeah.
So it always, just wait. Just give it some time and you're good.
Yeah. That's a huge reason to keep all your stuff. You just never know. My sister should have kept her bell-bottom jeans from the 90s,
Oh yeah, she should have.
It's back now.
It's back with a vengeance.
Yeah. So I guess where can people find your stuff? Where can they contact you with like all your quilt jackets and stuff like that? Is there a good place? Is Instagram like the best platform for you? Do you have a website?
Yeah, Instagram is kind of my main. That's where I probably do most of my. That's where I launch things, and I have most of my customer base. So that would be, yeah, that's the best place to check out like what I have that's new. And like when I do quilt jackets, I'll do like X amount, and then I'll drop them on Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's like first look first, you know, but I do have a website as well. And it connects to, for now, it connects to my Etsy page, mainly because you know, just because it's such a side business, Etsy is a really good way of like utilizing like customers that you may not normally get because it's a huge database. Eventually, I probably won't use their platform, but for now I am. And that's brookesiaco.com. And you link over to my Etsy that has all my current offerings. So whatever quilts I have in stock, quilt jackets I have in stock, you can order custom jackets with quilts that I haven't cut up yet. And also all my boxy collection as well is on there.
Is there any like wait lists or anything like with people where, because there is more limited quilts, like you get on a list or something, and then once you make one,
no, I basically, how I do it is if you see something that you like, if it's already made, I will obviously ship it out right away, or you can have it right away. If it's something that needs to be made, I right now have a 3-week wait. So you'll order, you'll pay. And then since I'm making it, it takes about 3 weeks before it's ready.
Gotcha.
But I don't have any type of list. I do tell people like if there's a quilt that they're looking for, they can let me know and I can look for it. And then when I find it, you know, let them know.
Yeah. Well, like the stuff you make is so cool. So definitely check it out and get a quilt jacket. I mean, winter's always coming, you know, fall's always coming. So
most of them are pretty light too, man. You can wear them all year round.
Yeah, especially here, you know, it's more temperate. So no, thank you so much for taking the time. I appreciate it. It was awesome chatting with you. I hope the estate sale, I hope you find some good things today.
Yeah, thank you. It's been fun.